What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about The Dark Defiles by Richard K. Morgan. So, guys, this is book number 3 in the Land Fit for Heroes trilogy. For those that are worried about spoilers, I want you to go ahead and feel free to get comfy, because I designed these reviews for this trilogy specifically for a reader to be able to watch all 3 before making a decision to get into this trilogy, because I do understand it's something that's a little dense. It's a little it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, both in its dark nature, its graphic nature, and its themes. It's just it's a lot to ask of a reader, and some certainly will want to know more about it before making that trek, and that's what these are all about. Okay, let's get into it. So in The Dark Defiles, we're basically picking up shortly after the events of the Cold Commands, and for the first time, all 3 of our heroes are in the same place starting out. So we start with Ringle, Arketh, and Egar Dragonsbane all in the same spot, and kind of all with the same motivation. They're on a mission to find the Ilrak Changeling's gravesite. Now, the Ilrak Changeling is the sorcerer champion that's basically been selected by the Aldrain. Now, at this point, we know that the Aldrain are ancient, and they had once ran the show here, basically in this world, and are definitely looking to do so once again. Now, the story does start out with our heroes together, but along the way, we will find them separated. Basically, war breaks out between Trelane and the Empire, and we will see Ringle kind of have to go off on his own. His mission will become one of kind of reaching towards the darkness, because Ringle is basically put in a position where he's going to have to follow a dark path if he is to overcome this obstacle of his future. While Egar and Arketh basically are pushing the story forward by, revealing the past. We get to start to see a lot of the political intrigue start to play out. We understand a lot of the past lore and history of the world and just what the fuck is going on, as well as these two, their journey will bring the biggest living threat that we have seen yet in this trilogy, as well as it will relay the fact to the reader that the stakes are high. So one of the first things I want to get into is the story's structure, because it is definitely structured different than the previous 2 books. If you watched my other reviews, you'll know that one of my main complaints about the Cold Commands was that it was structured so similar to the Steel Remains that it felt very repetitive. It just felt like the same shit, like we were just spinning our wheels. So here in The Dark Defiles, we get a much more linear path. Like, the story is unfolding almost in a straight line. If it wasn't for Ringle popping in and out of the gray places, this would probably a completely linear path. But it's not. But it's still the most of the 3, and I do think that frustrated readers of the trilogy at this point will see this this structure as a breath of fresh air, because we're going to work, man. But a part of this whole structure thing I want to add in is the ending, because the ending is structured to be a bit ambiguous, and it certainly is, and I feel like that will frustrate some readers that maybe have invested a good chunk of time in it. This is the thing, though, guys, is you got to know going in that this trilogy was designed almost to frustrate you. It was designed to shock you. It was designed to do a lot of stuff that fantasy just wasn't or hasn't done. And so the ending was from the beginning, the ending was supposed to be, kind of make you feel a little rough. And I do think that it actually was a little light in that area. It's still a dark ending, and it's it's got some crazy themes. One way or the other, this story being structured in a linear path will definitely make some praise it, but I think the structure of how it all wraps up will definitely frustrate some. Now, normally when I talk about a Richard K. Morgan book, I'm probably going to talk about that action and the sex. I will say, though, this book I feel like is the tamer, of the 3 when it comes to those. Not that there isn't action and sex in the book, but I don't feel like Morgan is smashing it up against your face like he does in the other 2. It's, the violence in here is still that Richard K. Morgan violence. It just seemed like it was tamed just a little bit. And I do think that that makes it more digestible for some though, but it's still, trust me, it's still graphic when compared to most other fantasy. But then also I want to talk about the elements I felt like Richard K. Morgan like amplified a lot in here, and that was like the magic and the science fiction elements, man. Like there's just, there's definitely a fantasy monster in here. You got magical weapons were really shining through in this one. We've had Ringel's sword, throughout the trilogy, but I feel like in this book, magical weapons are really making a showing here, and we're getting a lot of science fiction blended in, and man, it's really cool. It's cool to see this blend that Morgan has. I always really appreciate, because those are two of my favorite genres, fantasy and science fiction, and I think Morgan just really does a great job of blending the two into something that is just weird but very intriguing and draws you in. Now I want to take a second and talk about the characters, because we've been following these guys for 3 books, right? So, I mean, at this point, we're pretty invested in them, and we've seen some change in them. Not, complete change, but we have seen them look a little bit different than maybe when they started, and Ringel's definitely probably the one that has changed the most throughout the book, but he's still very much that cynical war hero back from Gallows Gap, the guy who's been marginalized his whole life, mostly because of his love interest. It's just, Morgan has really just done a great job, I feel like, with his heroes here. You know what I mean? Like, we do get some resemblances of character arcs, sort of. I feel like they're more of realistic arcs than they are fantasy arcs. These are arcs of real people. You know what I mean? They're not maybe the ones that you're looking for in a fantasy book. You know what I mean? Ringel will take a dark path. You know what I mean? And this is something I kind of saw coming from book 1. But it's nice to see. It's nice to see an author maybe not take the road that's always traveled. It's nice to see a character take a route that might be less desirable. We get to watch Arkith. She's been struggling. This is the one thing I loved about Morgan's writing with this character, is he really wrote a very competent and powerful woman, but he also made her very conflicted. She is the last of her kind here in this world. She's basically been abandoned by her own people. She's immortal, so she's going to live forever. She's a drug addict who, we watch her at her battle with drug addiction. And we also have just seen her as basically probably the most competent person in this whole world, yet she has to play second fiddle as an advisor to the Emperor. And there's another character, throughout this trilogy that is I really like the work that Morgan did with the Emperor, because first, you really fucking hate him. He's a cocksucker kind of character. But there will be times where he kind of reveals himself to be just he's human. You know what I mean? Especially in his private conversations between him and Arkith, you get this different side of the Emperor. And, I applauded Morgan for that, because this is a character that you will spend the majority of the time hating. But he does find a way to write him where you can just kind of see his perspective and sympathize him for just a moment. And then we have Egar Dragonsbane. And, Egar is a character that is easy to like, because he's kind of the more jovial of the 3, you know what I mean? Ringel's very cynical, and Arkith obviously has her, issues. Egar's thing is he just doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere, but he still tries, you know what I mean? He tries. But the thing is, throughout this, especially in this book, we will just come to understand that Egar Dragonsbane just does not feel at home anywhere. He really does not belong anywhere. And so, because of that, the only place that he feels like he truly belongs is by the side of his friends. Kind of segueing off of characters, I just want to take a minute and talk about what Richard K. Morgan really did as far as how he portrayed his heroes here in his trilogy. Because Richard K. Morgan, he certainly does have heroes, but they're not the fantasy heroes. They're war heroes, and they're certainly flawed. They're people, you know what I mean? These guys and gals might have done amazing things on the battlefield. They may have saved, hundreds, thousands of lives. They may have even like saved the end of the world. But that doesn't mean at the end of the day that they're not rough around the edges, that they're still, human and flawed. And I just feel like Richard K. Morgan did such a great job of painting these kinds of pictures of these heroes here in his world. He also did an amazing job of just portraying like the aftermath of these wars. You know what I mean? Not just the heroes, but the veterans of these wars. There's parts in here that really reminded me, there was like things that paralleled our own world. Some of the war here or veterans here in these books are, very reminiscent of our own like Vietnam War vets that came home and got spit on, or, maybe they had problems that went unchecked because they just weren't given the right care when they came home from fighting for their country. And now they're homeless, living on the streets or whatever, and a lot of that it is a thing in our own world plays out in Richard K. Morgan's world as well, and I felt like he did it like perfect to the T, because I could feel it. It hits home. It's sad and it's just depressing, but it's also a big part of this world and the way that Richard K. Morgan delivers a story. Now, as far as my 2 cents for the slow and the struggling, man, I do think that this trilogy is worth the read. I don't think that struggling readers should be lining up to read it, because I think that Richard K. Morgan has one of the most intelligent proses, like writing styles. Like a lot of his metaphors might be so smart that they go over your head. It definitely, I feel like a seasoned reader, this is more structured for a seasoned reader than a struggling reader. If you are a struggling reader and you just won't listen to me, by all means, make sure you got buddies. Read this with friends, because even if you're a seasoned reader, I think that just, Richard K. Morgan is going to be hitting you with some heavy content, and everyone will maybe pull something like different out of it, and in the end you can kind of pull all your things together and get a greater idea of the story. But slow readers, if none of these things are, you have no struggles, you're just wondering, is this worth my time? Absolutely yes. I do think that book 2 has that like middle book syndrome, and it's a little repetitive, but it still has a lot of stuff in there that will play out in book 3. Just the trilogy as a whole was one of the just most dark, graphic, violent, sexual pieces of fantasy that I have ever put my eyes on, and I do not regret a bit of it. I actually am planning on rereading this trilogy probably in a year or 2 from now, just because I think that's where I'm going to get even more enjoyment out of it, is because I think I'll have, having a good grasp of the story already, I think I'll be able to kind of maybe get a little bit more, because there is things that are just kind of left up to interpretation. There is a lot of ambiguous stuff going on, and you're dealing with heavy themes: time travel, reincarnation, worlds within worlds, or just, it's a lot. But yes, it will be worth your time if you're looking for something different in fantasy. This is almost as different as you can get. It, like I said, it's the most violent, dark, disturbing, depressing, just like mind-bending. It's great, guys, but it's not going to be for a lot of people. That's just the facts. There's going to be a lot of people that this will just frustrate, scare, disturb, and they won't want to get into it. But for those that are daring enough, that want to look into the darkness and let the darkness look back, yeah, this is worth your time. All right, guys, as always, thanks for spending some time down here at the channel, and to Richard K. Morgan, a gadoosh. Woo! 2 thumbs up, buddy, man. Thank you for having the guts to do something so dark and just hard-hitting. I hope and I pray, sir, that you make a comeback to the fantasy genre, because, man, I'll be waiting. I will, sir. Please. All right, guys. Hopefully you were entertained. Like I said, these things were put together so that the reader could get a better idea of the trilogy and maybe, make that, a more informed decision if they want to embark on such a dark and dastardly quest. One that I think does pay off in the end, actually throughout the whole thing. So, guys, thanks for stopping by. If you're new, please like and subscribe. It really helps me grow the channel. You know what time it is. Brr.